We have another session for you, so I'm very excited. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Thank you. And I think we have our speaker, Davide. So our next session today, it's about, we're going to take a turn. We're going to talk about, we're going to bring in a perspective of industry and application and in quantum computing today. And we have with us our next speaker, Davide Corbelletto. He is going to talk to us about how quantum computing is being explored in one of the world's most complex and data-intensive industries, financial services. Davide is a distinguished quantum specialist and team leader at Intesa Sanpaolo, one of Europe's largest banking groups, where he leads the bank's Quantum Competence Center, driving research into how quantum technologies can address complex challenges across banking and finance. He has over 20 years of experience that spans high-performance computing, quantum computing, and emerging computational approaches, and he brings both a technical depth and real-world perspective, and that's going to make today's session especially valuable. He's also an adjunct professor at Politecnico di Torino, and yeah, very excited to welcome him to the program. Please join me in welcoming Davide. Over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Greetings from Italy. I'm really pleased to be here with you today. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and welcome to this webinar. It won't be technical at all, so it will be more, let me say, motivational, like as I was told to do. So this webinar, in this webinar, I'm going to briefly present what an industrial research and development team does on quantum computing in finance, specifically mine. So let me check if you are able to see my slide. Can you please confirm?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, yeah. So you are great. So they are moving on. So perfect. Yep. Okay. Before we begin, let me just briefly introduce myself. I know you have already done it, but I'm Davide Corbelletto. I'm a mathematician, but I've been working in computer science for 21 years this year. So the last 10 of which in Intesa Sanpaolo Bank. I'm also the distinguished quantum specialist and team leader of the Competence Center of Intesa Sanpaolo. So inside my function, the Tech Observatory, we have also this Quantum Competence Center. For those who don't know, Intesa Sanpaolo is the largest bank in Italy and one of the greatest ones for market capitalization. And let me just say that during this talk, I will provide you some useful information about how our competence center is organized and what we are currently doing in the field of quantum computing. So let me open this talk with a legitimate question. Why should Italy's leading bank, and as I said before, one of the largest financial group in Europe by market capitalization, care about quantum computing nowadays? Well, there are at least two solid reasons. The first reason is the perspective value of the technology. In its latest quantum technology monitor, McKinsey estimates that the economic impact of quantum computing application between now and 2035 will range between 0.4 and 0.6 trillions dollars for financial services. And the second reason is the number of feasible use cases where financial services is currently outperforming all the other industries. The latest report from Politecnico di Milano's Quantum Computing and Communication Observatory tell us that 25% of quantum computing applications are concentrated in the domain of financial services. And this is not a forecast like the previous slide. It is already consolidated figure today. And that's why Intesa Sanpaolo has set up a competence center. The mission of Quantum Competence Center consists of 5 different tasks. So lead, supervise, and enable all quantum computing experiments started within the group. Then, of course, it's really important to train the future workforce of quantum software engineers and quantum algorithm designers, and also popularize the topic, for example, by broadcasting seminars or organizing lectures internally. Then we also try to advise all our colleagues who need to deal with quantum technologies, such as our colleagues from cybersecurity, innovation, or our venture capitalists who started to invest in quantum computing company. Then we also collaborate with universities and promote academic research to create beneficial synergies. The idea is to create an ecosystem around us. And finally, define the guidelines for a progressive and consistent adoption of these cutting-edge technologies within the bank. But which concrete use cases are we referring to when we talk about quantum computing application inside a bank? Well, let's begin with optimization problems. Optimization is an extremely common task in a company like a bank. For instance, every day we tackle challenges such as dynamic portfolio optimization to determine the most advantageous trading trajectory. We design, for example, optimal cash pooling strategies to balance the accounts of our international branches and the centralized treasuries, or we manage collateral in order to reduce the funds locked to secure for example, a loan. Quantum computers are particularly well suited to address this type of problems as they are highly effective at finding a candidate solution that, even if not, come very close to be the best possible outcome. Let's now turn to the second group of relevant application, which are stochastic simulations. Just as with optimization, simulation methods are found virtually everywhere in a bank. They are, I usually say they are behind every corner, since they are used to estimate quantities such as derivative prices, a different type of key risk indicators, and also to build stress test scenarios that evaluate the ability to withstand unexpected shocks, like for example financial shocks we have experimented in the last few years. And in this context, quantum computing's capability to generate truly random numbers can be a real game changer, because the reliability of these estimations, in general of Monte Carlo methods, fundamentally depends on the quality of the randomness, the underlying randomness. Let's move then to machine learning, or artificial intelligence, as you prefer to refer to it. In practice, nearly every financial modern algorithm uses, let me say, one or more machine learning models as an input preprocessing stage or as an output post-processing stage. So machine learning is really widespread in financial services. The challenge is that this model, particularly during their training phase, are extremely resource intensive. And this is becoming increasingly clear that the traditional computation paradigm is unlikely to be the most sustainable way to cope with this demand of, for example, computation time that reflects, of course, in energy consumption. More powerful quantum computer we could potentially offer in the future a smarter and more environmentally friendly solution to these heavy requirements. But at the same time, artificial intelligence is not just limited to supervised learning, even if that is all we tend to discuss today due to the hype around generative pre-trained transformers and applications like LLM. There are other important branches of artificial intelligence that are highly relevant for banking and insurance, but have not yet experienced a decisive breakthrough and still needs substantial research. Their limitations are especially evident in unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning, where performance is often far from optimal today. To highlight just a couple of potential use cases, fraud detection, difficult to handle with labeled data because fraudsters currently change their attack methods roughly every 6 or 8 weeks now. And investment recommendation driven by real-time market movements may be better generated using a dynamic reward and penalty mechanism, so basically using reinforcement learning, than relying solely on traditional predictive models. And finally, we also confront some bad news. Quantum computing, unfortunately, brings with it a serious potential risk for cybersecurity. Shor's algorithm has been shown to be able to break RSA, elliptic curve cryptography, and Diffie-Hellman algorithm, which are the most commonly used asymmetric encryption schemes that protects our data through communication, and also secure financial transaction and digital signatures. So think about, for example, smart contracts or even digital identities. We need to let me say, enforce in order to verify your identity when you begin to be a customer. Therefore, even if you remain reluctant to explore the beneficial use of quantum computing in the financial space, you should at least prepare for the risk it is likely to introduce. Well, in this slide, I try to outline the key milestone in the journey of the Competence Center that I have led since it was established in 2020. Of course, I won't able now to cover the time to cover each one of these boxes represented in the slide in depth, so I'll focus on a few noteworthy recent accomplishments. In February 2025, we deployed into production the first quantum-inspired application for optimizing ATM cash replenishment in an outsourced network service. This solution received the first prize in Operations and IT category at the most recent Italian Innovation Financial Awards. In addition, in the early part of the year, the UK-based Financial Research Institute Evident included our Competence Center in its inaugural Quantum Leaderboard, where we placed second worldwide behind only the JP Morgan Global Technology Applied Research Center. And in September 2025, for the third consecutive year, we took part in the world's premier quantum computing conference, the IEEE QCE, so-called Quantum Week, presenting two industrial research papers, one of which received the second best paper award in the quantum application track. In this slide and the following ones, you will see a list of research articles we have published over these years. And as you will notice, they span a broad spectrum of topics, from credit risk analysis to portfolio optimization, from fraud detection to option pricing. And as a case study, I selected the project on derivative pricing who won the second best paper award during the last Quantum Week and was presented at Albuquerque last September. This is a subject that we had already studied a lot, and in fact, we also released a preliminary result in 2024 that earlier work showed that it was feasible to handle instruments with multiple underlying assets, specifically addressing rainbow options using a full quantum algorithm. Yet, since pricing a rainbow option is not especially challenging for a classical computer, the real benefit was expected from adapting that previous algorithm to a path-dependent derivatives. A path-dependent derivatives is basically a financial instrument whose valuation is based on an entire time series, such, for example, autocallable options. During Quantum Week 2025 in Albuquerque, we presented a solution we had been developing over the previous year using also the Cineca Leonardo supercomputer, which is one of the 10th most powerful supercomputer installed in Italy in Bologna. And we used that as an emulation platform. In that context, we were able to demonstrate a quadratic speedup over the standard classical Monte Carlo method commonly employed to price these multi-asset derivatives, along with a superior convergence rate in the resulting estimation. But let's see also what we are doing on the quantum resilience side, so how to mitigate the quantum threats. Well, we are basically doing three things. Testing post-quantum cryptography to substitute RSA, elliptic curve cryptography, and Diffie-Hellman. One should assess the new standard approved by NIST in terms of latencies, which are MLKM for data encryption, and MLDSA and SLHDSA for digital signature. As I mentioned before, it's not just a problem of encrypted data. We are moving from Alice to Bob, but it's also the problem also concern smart contracts and digital identities, which are even more important for a bank. And in fact, we are experimenting also physical proof in order to, let me say, change application logic where it's possible. because of course, even if I am a mathematician, I have to admit that the physical proof is better than just a mathematical one. So experiment quantum proof communication channel established with photonic technologies, both in cable fiber and in the future also in free space, like using quantum key distribution. And now that we have seen the potential solution, let me stress the fact that the real difficult part is not finding the solution. Fortunately, these solutions are available. Of course, they are not sometimes they are not production ready, but they will be. The problem is to, let me say, take an end-to-end risk assessment of your IT system, because unfortunately, in the past years, cryptography was considered as a commodity, and we need to better understand where it has been used inside our system, where it has unfortunately been embedded sometimes, not only to substitute it, but also in some cases just to update it. And so it's really important to protect ourselves from attack that are, let me say, are taking place just now. So the window of vulnerability is already open, like for example, harvest now, decrypt later, or for as a digital signatures, trust now, forge later. And we need so to enable as fast as we can the transition to a crypto agility framework in order to rapidly switch encryption protocols when needed. And this is not just relevant for quantum threat, but even for further threat we don't know at the moment. And finally, I like to briefly outline the activities we are currently working on. So in January this year, we completed 2 projects financed by the National High Performance Computing, Big Data and Quantum Computing Center, funded by the European National Recovery and Resilience Plan, called for proposal, which we applied and won some years ago. The technical reports describing the work done in credit scoring and fraud detection areas are going are under publication, but several scientific articles written with a system of academic partners what supported us in our industrial research activity are already available in a preprint version. We have then 3 ongoing projects with Links Foundation, which is one of the leading Italian private research center. And one of these projects concerns the optimization of financial portfolios constrained by the risk-aware profile. And it's also involving people from our artificial intelligence lab within the Innovation Center of Intesa San Paolo, and also people from Chief Risk Officer, especially the function market and counterparty risk internal model. This paper and also the other 2 papers about digital quantum reservoir computing and another one that we are working on in the space of optimization are going to be, have already been submitted to the next Quantum Week that will take place in Toronto in this September. And so we hope that they will be accepted and then disclosed completely during that conference in the conference proceedings. And finally, starting in the last quarter of 2025, we have started this collaboration with an Italian startup which is called G2Q. That is a startup focused on quantum computing, which we mentored in 2024 together with some colleagues from Innovation Strategy during the Techstars program that took place that year on a project. And now we are working on a project for optimizing collateral management, in which we have also involved our financial engineering function from our corporate investment banking division. And so I hope in time, even if I have this little problem at the very beginning, I have concluded my presentation. So I would like to thank you very much for your attention and also for inviting me. And if there are any questions, I will more than happy to answer. I can, let me say, stay a little longer and answer maybe a couple of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Davide. I will be doing the Q&A with you. So if you have questions for Davide, you can put them in the Discord channel and I will ask them for you. We have one here from Vishal. It says, do you think future quantum compilers could automatically detect and exploit this structure?
Yes, of course. And in fact, That's why Intesa Sanpaolo, with its venture capitalist branch, Neva, decided to invest in 2022 in an Israeli company called Classic, which exactly is doing this kind of thing. So not only improving compiling and transpiling phase, of course, we are talking about just digital quantum computing, not adiabatic quantum computing in this case, but they are also synthesizing circuits, which means basically you can try to build an equivalent circuit stressing some parameters, like, for example, the depth of the circuit, so the number of layered operation in the circuits, or the width of the circuit, so the number of qubits.
All right, thank you for that answer. The next question I have is from Megan, and it says, in your portfolio optimization work, where is the biggest bottleneck today? Formulating the optimization problem, solving it, or validating the results?
Of course, is in the formulation, because modern. I will be provocative here. You can find lots of papers about portfolio optimization from other important banks, like, for example, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and other European who claim to, let me say, find a concrete result in portfolio optimization. But if you, at the end of the day, if you analyze these kinds of papers, you will see just the Markowitz formulation. Markowitz formulation is no longer used for 40 years. So it's not really, it's modern portfolio optimization just for textbooks in university. But real portfolio optimization consider more advanced constraints inside the formulation. I will provide you just two examples. The first one is diversification index. How much are you able to diversify your assets in building your portfolio? And the other one that is really important is the what is called the anti-correlation. Anti-correlation means not just two assets are not correlated, means they are negatively correlated. So when one is growing up, due to, for example, to, let me say, to an price of the market, you need also the other one should balance it. So it's not just finding, let me say, it's not just a matter of finding the most remunerative portfolio, avoiding the potential risk, for example, containing the volatility, but it's also a matter of considering other elements. And these are precisely what we are doing. And you will see in the next month when we are going to publish this work we are currently writing about the risk-aware portfolio optimization that considers also these more complicated elements.
Wonderful. All right. So next question we have, how long do you think it will take companies to move to PQC QKD solutions, and how urgent is it?
PQC is extremely urgent. I was in Boston. I've just headed back from US. I was in Boston last week at the Quantum Tech World 2026, and one of the main topic also in the US. There were two executive orders last week from United States presidents about this topic. So it's really urgent to do this transition by at least have a program by the end of this year in order to complete the transition as soon as possible. And the European Commission from our side, so from Europe, is recommending to do that for all critical systems by the end of 2030. And as I said before, it's not a matter of finding the solution, because NIST, so the National Institute for Standard and Technology, luckily enough, has, let me say, has already provided algorithms, new algorithms based, for example, on lattice or hash functions, which have been proven to be resistant both to classical and quantum attacks. And this kind of algorithms have already been tested. We have already tested, for example, MLChem 768, and there is no problem, for example, with the latency, substituting, for example, elliptic curve. The problem is finding every place, as I said before, in which this cryptography is used inside your system, because nobody has, let me say, treating cryptography as a software development in the past. So cryptography should be a service that, let me say, is going to be replaceable very quickly and very efficiently. At the moment, unfortunately, is not. Is a commodity in our system. And so the difficult part is to enable crypto agility. Regarding QKD, of course, is the target solution because, as I said before, a physical proof is more than a mathematical proof. The problem is that QKD at the moment is not mature enough because you can just use it efficiently on cable fiber and on a short range. So we are talking about maybe a couple of hundred of kilometers. The real challenge here is to enable it on free space. And so using, for example, with satellites, there are lots of proposals to use, for example, light with satellites. And then, because I think you know the problem from a physical point of view, you cannot repeat a quantum signal because there is no cloning theorem. So the only thing that you can do is amplify the signal, but amplifying the signal means also that you lose the let me say, the precision of the signal. So the real challenge is to enable it on our mobile phones, basically. So not just with cables.
All right, so we are a little over. We do have one more question if you're able to do that. So the question I'm going to go with here is, among QAOA and VQE, which variational algorithm do you find more practical on today's quantum hardware?
That's a really good question. I think that the most honest answer is it depends on the type of algorithm you are trying to solve. For example, we find let me say, QAOA competitive sometimes against adiabatic formulation when it happens to solve some optimization problem, like, for example, portfolio optimization problem using, of course, a digital quantum computer instead of a quantum annealer. VQE is really good, for example, in solving a problem that can be classified as unsupervised machine learning. So, for example, for fraud detection, we wrote a paper in which we find some relevant result applying a variational quantum eigensolver to, for example, an unsupervised problem. So it really depends on the problem.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Davide. We appreciate all of your
Thank you again.
insight.
Sorry for the inconvenience at the very beginning. I'm really sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult when we start out because we start with our first speaker and have time before we admit everybody, and then the second speaker is kind of left to figure it out.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we really appreciate your participation and your assistance in helping us learn. Everyone, we will see you again on Wednesday for our guest speakers on then. And as a reminder, Friday this week, there are no sessions. So keep being active on Discord, and we will see you on Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. Bye, everybody.
Bye.